In a world that never slows down, where the clamor of criticism and the whispers of self-doubt threaten to drown out our inner peace, there's a truth so powerful it can shift the very ground beneath our feet. The way you see yourself shapes the reality you live. This isn't about slapping on a fake smile or drowning in feel-good platitudes. It's about a raw, unshakable principle that women have clung to through centuries of struggle, a principle rooted in the ancient wisdom of Stoicism. It's the art of resilience, the mastery of self, and the courage to rewrite the stories we've been told about who we are and what we're worth. Picture a young woman in 1960s Harlem, her dreams dismissed by a society that saw her skin before her soul. Yet she marched forward, pen in hand, to write poetry that would echo through generations. Or think of a mother today, exhaustion etched into her bones, finding strength in the quiet of dawn to face another day. These aren't just tales, they're testaments to the power every woman holds within her, a power to reset the lens through which she views herself, to turn pain into purpose, and to rise above the chaos that surrounds her. Today, I'm calling you, yes, you, the woman reading this, to step into a journey guided by Stoic philosophy. A timeless compass that doesn't promise calm seas but teaches us how to sail through storms. We're going to explore how women can harness this ancient practice to turn inward, to question the voices that chip away at our worth, and to build a life woven with threads of strength, acceptance, and unapologetic self-love. This isn't about brushing aside the hard moments, the sting of rejection, the weight of comparison, or the suffocating grip of societal norms that still try to cage us. It's about taking those jagged pieces and shaping them into tools for growth, stacking them like stones until you stand atop a fortress of your own making, taller than the doubts that once held you captive. By the time we're done, you'll not only see yourself anew, but carry with you practical, soul-deep ways to wield stoic resilience against the modern battles women face every day, whether it's silencing that relentless inner critic or standing firm in a world that too often demands we shrink. Understanding the roots of self-doubt through a woman's lens. Why do we, as women, sometimes find it so hard to love ourselves? The answer isn't simple. It's a tapestry woven from threads of the past, threads we didn't always choose to pick up. Imagine a girl in a dusty classroom in rural Texas, circa 1975, her hand raised high with an answer, only to hear her teacher snap, "Girls don't need to be so smart." Or picture a woman today, her phone glowing late at night, scrolling through a feed of flawless faces and curated lives, each swipe whispering, "You're not enough." These moments aren't just fleeting, they're the quiet cuts that, over years, carve canyons into how we see ourselves. Stoicism, a philosophy shaped by men like Marcus Aurelius, but lived in the shadows by countless women who never made the history books, offers us a way out. It tells us we can't control the words flung at us or the standards thrust upon us, but we can control what we do with them. Take a woman like Fannie Lou Hamer, born into Mississippi poverty in 1917. Beaten and jailed for daring to register to vote in 1962. She didn't let the world's brutality define her. She chose to see herself as a force, a voice that roared against injustice. That's Stoicism at its core, stepping back from the hurt, peering at it with clear eyes, and asking, what's really going on here? Maybe the Texas teacher was trapped in his own narrow world, afraid of a girl who might outshine him. Maybe those Instagram queens are just as fragile behind their filters, wrestling with the same doubts you do. When we peel back the emotion and look at these moments subjectively, we start to see they're not verdicts on our worth, they're just noise, echoes of someone else's limits, not ours. This isn't about pointing fingers or sinking into yesterday's mud. It's about finding clarity, the kind that lights a path forward. I remember being 19, a shy freshman at a state college, when a professor sneered at my essay, saying, "You'll never write anything worth reading." For years, I believed him, my pen rambling over blank pages, my voice stifled by his scorn. Then one rainy afternoon, I sat with a cup of tea and thought, what if he was wrong? What if his words were about his own bitterness, not my potential? That shift didn't erase the memory, but it cracked its hold on me. As women, we're often handed shame like it's our birthright, taught to soak up criticism until it stains us. Stoicism hands us something else, a lens to sift through the mess, to separate fact from feeling, and to decide what's true. This is where the real work starts, not in pretending the pain never happened, but in choosing to let it go, to stop letting it pen the chapters of our lives. For so many of us, this struggle isn't new. Think of the women who came before your grandmother, maybe who scrubbed floors to feed her kids, swallowing insults from bosses who saw her as less. Or the suffragettes, mocked and jailed, who refused to let a man's no define their fight. Their stories whisper to us, you're not alone in this. Those external blows, comments, rejections, expectations, shape us, sure, but Stoicism says they don't have to chain us. When I look back at that professor now, I don't feel anger, I feel pity. He didn't see me. And that's his loss, not mine. This reflection is the first step, the laying of a cornerstone. It's where we begin to untangle the lies we've believed about ourselves and start threading a new narrative, one stitch at a time, with the wisdom of women who've walked this road before us. Healing the inner chill, a Stoic conversation across time. Now, let's dive deeper into something tender and transformative, a practice that marries Stoic detachment with the compassion women so often pour into others, but rarely save for themselves. Close your eyes for a moment and see her, your younger self. Maybe she's 6, pigtails bouncing as she runs through a sprinkler, or 12, hunched over a diary, scribbling secrets she's too scared to say aloud. What does she look like? What's weighing on her little heart? For me, it's a girl with chipped front teeth, sitting on her bed in a trailer park, listening to her parents scream downstairs, convinced it's her fault they're falling apart. If I could sit with her now, I'd take her small hands and say, "Sweetheart, you're not the storm. You're the light breaking through it. You're enough, just as you are." This isn't some fluffy daydream. It's a Stoic exercise in self-acceptance, a way to face our past not with shame but with understanding. Think of someone like Oprah Winfrey, born into poverty in 1950 from Mississippi, abused and dismissed. Yet she found a way to speak to that scared little girl inside her, to tell her she was worthy of more. That's what we're doing here. As women, we carry scars no one sees, the time a friend laughed at our dreams, the parent who never showed up, the partner who made us feel invisible. Stoicism asks us to step back, to listen to that younger self with kindness. What did she want? To be seen, maybe, or to feel safe? For me, it was to be loved without having to earn it. A need I buried under layers of people-pleasing until I finally looked back and saw her waiting. I met a woman once, Maria, a 40-year-old barista Queens, who told me she does this every Sunday. She sits with a coffee, closes her eyes, and talks to the 10-year-old version of herself, the one who hid in her room when had drank too much. "You're strong," she tells her. "You made it through." And every time she says it, she feels lighter, like she's lifting a weight off both their shoulders. That's the power of this practice. It's not just healing, it's fortifying. When I tell my little girl, it's okay to cry, it's okay to not know, I'm not just soothing her, I'm armoring the woman I've become. It's a quiet act of defiance against every time we've been told to hush, to shrink, to apologize for taking up space. This conversation across time matters because it rewrites the rules. We've been taught as women that our worth is a prize to be won through beauty, obedience, sacrifice. Stoicism says no, your worth is a fire that's always burned, even when the world dumped water on it. Think of the girls growing up now, watching us. What if they saw us loving ourselves this way, reaching back to hug the child we were, telling her she's enough? I imagine my daughter someday facing her own doubts, and I want her to know this trick. Talk to yourself like you're your own best friend. For Maria, for me, for every woman reading this, it's a bridge, a way to carry our younger selves forward, not as burdens, but as allies in the fight for who we are now. Turning flaws into strengths, a woman's Stoic revolution. Every woman has something she's been taught to despise about herself. For me, it's my laugh, too wild, cackle that's earned me side eyes since I was a kid. Maybe for you, it's your hips, your stutter, or the way your eyes crinkle when you smile. Society loves to slap labels on us, too much, not enough, and hand us a script, fix this, hide that. But Stoicism steps in with a radical idea. What if those aren't flaws? What if they're the rough, gorgeous edges that make you who you are? This isn't about pretending everything's perfect, it's about claiming what's real and refusing to let the world's yardstick measure your soul. Look at someone like Elizzo. Her body a canvas of curves in a culture obsessed with stick-thin ideals. She didn't shrink, she sang louder, danced harder, turned every too big into a crown of glory. That's Stoic defiance in living color, taking what others call weakness and forging it into strength. I used to hate my height. 5'9" felt like a curse in a world of dainty heroines. I'd slouch, tuck myself into corners, until one day I stood up straight and thought, wait, this is me. My height means I can spot my friends in a crowd, haul groceries in one trip, lift my kid high to see the stars. It's not a defect, it's a feature, one I've learned to love. This shift is freedom, but it's not instant. Years of being told you're too loud, or you're too tall don't melt away with one epiphany, they take work. I started small, letting my laugh rip at a party, watching people flinch then smile. Now, it's my signature, a sound that says I'm here, unapologetic. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, our minds, our choices, and let the rest fall away. I can't change how others react to my laugh, but I can change how I feel about it. And that's power. Imagine if every woman reading this picked one thing she's hated, her freckles, her shyness, her fears, temper, and said, this is mine. I'm keeping it. That's not just self-esteem, it's a revolution of identity. For women, this is everything. We're raised to see our differences as cracks, but Stoicism says they're pillars. Think of Frida Kahlo. Her unibrow and scars a rebellion against beauty's rules, her pain a brushstroke of brilliance. She didn't hide, she owned it. When I stopped seeing my laugh as a flaw, I stopped hiding the rest of me too, the messy, bold, imperfect parts. It's uncomfortable at first, like stretching a muscle you've never used, but over time, those flaws stop stinging. They start shining. We build a fortress not by sanding down our edges, but by stacking them high until the world's arrows glance off and we stand, proud and whole. The art of self-compassion, a woman's quiet power. How often do we pause and ask ourselves, how am I really doing? Not with a judge's gavel, but with the softness we'd offer a friend nursing a broken heart. Self-compassion isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, especially for women who've spent lifetimes tending to everyone else's needs while letting our own fray. Stoicism, with its steady call to mindfulness, reminds us we hold the reins to our inner world. We can't stop the chaos, the crying baby, the overflowing inbox, the stranger who cuts in line, but we can choose to meet ourselves with gentleness instead of a whip. I think of my friend Leela, the teacher in Atlanta who spent 2020 juggling virtual classes and her own kids, collapsing into bed each night with a litany of "I should have done better." One evening, she stopped, looked in the mirror, and asked, "Would I say this to my students?" No, she'd tell them they're trying, they're enough. So she started whispering it to herself, "You're doing what you can." That's Stoic compassion, seeing the struggle, naming it, and refusing to let it judge you. We all trip, the deadline we miss, the dinner that burns, the time we snap at someone we love. But piling on guilt, that's a choice we don't have to make. Next time you falter, try this, it's okay. I'm still growing. It's small, but it's mighty. This isn't weakness, it's strength with roots. When we forgive ourselves, we clear ground for something new. I used to torture myself over every misstep, like the time I botched a presentation at work, my voice shaking, my slides a mess. I'd replay it for weeks, a failure on loop. Now, I see it differently. I showed up. I spoke. That's a win. Celebrating those quiet victories, getting out of bed, hugging my daughter, finishing this sentence, builds a foundation no storm can shake. For women, this is rebellion against a culture that demands we're perfect or nothing. Stoicism says, be here, be kind, and watch that kindness bloom, not just within you, but in every tired, beautiful woman you pass on the street. Leela told me once, after a brutal week, she sat on her porch and cried, not from shame, but relief. She'd let herself off the hook. That's what this practice does. It frees us from the critic in our heads, the one who's louder than any boss or troll. We're human, not machines, and Stoicism gets that. It's about presence, feeling the weight of a bad day without letting it crush you, seeing the chance to learn instead of the chance to lose. When I mess up now, I don't spiral, I breathe. I say, and I mean it. This is how we grow, not by punishing ourselves, but by holding ourselves close, the way we hold a sister, a daughter, a friend. Living authentically, a woman's Stoic declaration. What does it mean to live authentically as a woman in a world that spent centuries telling us who to be? It's not a buzzword you slap on a coffee mug. It's a rebellion, a quiet roar, a refusal to let anyone else hold the pen to your Stoicism, with its steady voice, calls us to align our lives with our truest selves, not the scripts handed down by society, family, or even the mirror's harsh glare. It's about peeling back the layers of should and must until you're left with the raw, beating heart of who you are, then stepping into that truth with both feet, no apologies. For women, this isn't just a choice, it's a declaration, a way to reclaim the space we've too often surrendered to fit someone else's mold. Think about it. How many times have you dimmed your light to avoid making waves? I used to do it all the time, softening my edges, swallowing my words, dressing in muted grays because someone once said my bright colors were too much. But one day, I showed up to a friend's dinner party in a flamingo pink dress, the kind that screams before you even open your mouth. Heads turned, eyebrows lifted, and for a split second, I felt that old urge to shrink. Then I stood taller, laughed louder, and thought, this is me. Stoicism doesn't ask us to conform to the crowd. It tells us to wear what feels like home, to speak what burns in our chests, to let our quirks fly free. That night, I danced in that dress like it was my flag, and I've never felt more alive. Take someone like Autumn Laurier of words, who stood in the 20th century's storm of racism and sexism and said, I am not your silence. She wore her identity, black, queer, woman-like armor, not a burden, and her authenticity carved a path for every woman who's ever felt the weight of not enough. That's what living authentically does. It's not about fitting in. It's about standing out in the way only you can. I think of my friend Samira, a 32-year-old accountant who ditched her suits to open a bakery, because numbers never lit her up like flour and yeast did. People whispered, stable career for scones. But she needed dough with a smile that said, "This is my truth." Her hands are calloused now, her heart full, and she's never looked back. This isn't easy though. Authenticity takes guts. Society loves to box us in. Be soft but not weak, bold but not loud, pretty but not vain. Stoicism cuts through that noise with a simple rule. Live in harmony with your nature, not their rules. For me, that meant owning my love for sci-fi novels and loud debates, the parts I used to hide to seem ladylike. I'd sit at parties, nodding politely, while inside I was bursting to argue about lightsabers or politics. Then one night, I let it rip, ranted about Yoda for 10 minutes straight. And the room didn't cringe, they leaned in. Turns out, the real me wasn't too much, she was magnetic. When you stop pretending, you draw the right people close, the ones who love the unfiltered you, not the version you polished for approval. I remember my Aunt Carla, a woman who wore overalls to church because skirts made her itch. The congregation side-eyed her, but she'd sit in the front pew, head high, humming hymns like she owned the place. She told me once, life's too short to wear what pinches. That's Stoic wisdom in overalls. Focus on what you control, your choices, your voice, and let the rest roll off. Carla didn't care if she fit the mold. She cared if she fit herself. And that's the gift of authenticity. It's not about pleasing the world. It's about pleasing the woman in the mirror. When I started living this way, wearing my pink dresses, geeking out, speaking my mind, the static in my head faded. No more wrestling between who I am and who I should be. Just peace, like a river finding its course. This peace isn't just for you, it's a beacon. Think of the women watching, your sister, your daughter, the girl next door. When you live authentically, you show them it's possible. I think of my cousin Jade, who at 19 saw me quit a job I hated to write full-time. She told me later, "You made me brave enough to dye my hair blue." Small acts, pink dresses, blue hair, ripple out, building a world where women don't just survive the pressure to conform, they thrive beyond it. Stoicism calls this living with virtue, acting from your rational, real self, not the whims of the crowd or the pull of fleeting trends. It's clarity, knowing what you want, what you value, and chasing it with every step, even when the path gets rocky. For women, this is liberation in motion. Take my friend Priya, a single mom in Seattle who used to wear heels and fake smiles to look the part at her tech job. One day, she swapped them for sneakers and honesty, and told her boss she needed flex hours to raise her son. She braced for a fight, but he nodded, said, "I respect that." Authenticity didn't just free her, it built trust. When you show up as you, raw and real, you create space for others to do the same. I've seen it in my own life. The more I lean into my weirdness, my loud laugh, my nerdy tangents, the more my friends drop their own masks. It's contagious, this courage to be whole. Living this way cuts the chains of internal conflict. How many nights have you lain awake, torn between who you are and who you're supposed to be? I used to lose sleep over it. Should I be quieter, thinner, less me? Now I sleep like a rock, because my outside matches my inside. Stoicism prizes this alignment. When your actions echo your soul, you're not fighting yourself anymore. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. I think of my mom, who'd cook curry in a tiny apartment while neighbors complained about the smell. She'd shrug, say, "They'll get over it," and keep stirring. She wasn't selfish, she was solid, rooted in her own skin. That's what authenticity offers, a deep, unshakable contentment. This isn't a solo act, either. It's a sisterhood. Every woman who chooses herself, wearing what she loves, saying what she means, chasing what sets her alight, lights a torch for the rest of us. I met a woman named Rosa at a market once, selling handmade scarves in colors so bold they hurt your eyes. She was 60, widowed, and grinning like a kid. "I spent 40 years in beige," she said. "Now, I'm a rainbow." Her stall was packed, not because the scarves were cheap, but because her joy was irresistible. Authenticity isn't just freeing, it's magnetic, pulling in the people and moments that match your wavelength. Stoicism says this is virtue, living with integrity, guided by your own compass, not the shifting winds of opinion. For women it's more, it's defiance against a world that's tried to define us by our silence, our sighs, our smiles. I think of every time I've said no to fitting in, wearing sneakers to a wedding, skipping small talk for real talk, and felt my spine straighten. It's not about rejecting others, it's about embracing yourself, quirks and all. When I belt out a song off key or rant about spaceships, I'm not just me, I'm every woman who's ever been told to hush, proving we don't have to. This is the Stoic woman's declaration: I am mine, first and always, and that's where my power begins. The daily journey to self-love, a woman's Stoic path. What if loving yourself wasn't a destination but a road you walked every day, one step at a time, through mud and sunlight alike? For women, self-love isn't a prize we win after fixing all our flaws. It's a practice, a quiet, stubborn commitment to showing up for ourselves the way we've always shown up for others. Stoicism, with its roots in resilience, frames it as a daily act of courage, not a grand leap, but a series of small, steady choices that build a life where you're your own anchor. Some days, I wake up with a fire in my chest, looking in the mirror and saying, "You're a warrior." Other days, I'm dragging myself through shadows, doubt clawing at my heels, whispering I'll never be enough. That's the rhythm of it, highs and lows, triumphs and stumbles, and it's where the real magic happens. Think of Harriet Tubman, a woman born into slavery in 1820s Maryland, who didn't just escape her chains, but returned 13 times to free others. She didn't wake up fearless, she built it, night after night, choosing to trust herself when the world offered nothing but shackles. That's what this journey looks like, a daily decision to keep going, to nurture the woman you are becoming. For me, it starts simple: a cup of coffee on my porch, a moment to breathe and say, "You did good yesterday." When my best friend moved away last year, I didn't let the loneliness swallow me. I wrote myself a note: "You're still whole." It's not flashy, but it's fuel, a way to keep the flame alive when the wind howls. This practice isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. The Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's ours to hold, our thoughts, our actions, our grit. Some mornings, I feel like I could climb mountains, others, I'm just trying to climb out of bed. Both are victories. I think of my neighbor, Amina, a Somali immigrant who works 2 jobs and still finds time to braid her daughter's hair each night. She told me once, "I tell myself I'm strong, even when I'm tired." That's the Stoic way, meeting yourself where you are, not where you should be. When I lost a big client last fall, I didn't spiral. I sat with the sting, then said, "You'll find another way." And I did. It's not about ignoring the hurt. It's about refusing to let it own you. For women, we've been taught to measure our worth by how much we give, how well we mother, work, smile, until there's nothing left for us. Stoicism flips that: give to yourself first, not as a luxury, but as a lifeline. I started small, 5 minutes with a book, a walk to hear the birds, a whisper of "I'm proud of you" after a long day. Those moments stack up, like stones in a riverbed, smoothing the rough edges of doubt. I think of my grandmother, who sewed dresses by lamplight in the 1940s, her fingers bleeding, her spirit unbroken. She'd hum as she worked, a song of survival, and I hear it in my own quiet rituals now. This is legacy. Every step we take toward loving ourselves teaches the women around us, our daughters, our friends, to do the same. It's not always easy. Some days, self-love feels like a warm hug. Others, it's a wrestling match with the voice that says, "You're failing." Stoicism doesn't promise smooth sailing, it promises a steady hand on the wheel. When I doubt myself, I don't crumble, I pause. I ask, what can I control here? Maybe it's just getting through the next hour, cooking dinner, calling a friend. That's enough. I met a woman named Tanya at a bus stop once, a nurse with tired eyes and a quick smile. She said, "I tell myself I'm worth it every shift, even when I'm bone weary." That's the rhythm, one foot forward, then another, building a love that doesn't fade when the world gets loud. This journey shifts as we grow. What I needed at 20, validation, while dreams looks different at 35, with a kid and a mortgage. Stoicism gets that. It's about adapting, not arriving. I think of my mom, who'd sit on our stoop after a double shift, sipping tea, saying, "I'm still me." She didn't have the words for it, but she lived it, day by day, choosing herself amid the grind. For women, this is power, not a loud bang, but a slow burn, a love we tend like a garden, weeding out guilt, planting seeds of grace. Each choice, each "I'm here," each "I'll try again," is a brick in a house we're building, one where we're safe to be flawed, fierce, and free. A life transformed, the Stoic woman's legacy. What if your life could be a lighthouse for every woman lost in the dark? This journey we've walked together isn't just about you, it's about us, a tapestry of women who faced down storms and still found their feet. Stoicism isn't some dusty scroll, it's a living flame, a guide for women to stand tall, love deep, and live in bound. From that poet in 1960's Harlem, her verses a rebellion against silence, to the mother in today's suburbs, her quiet strength a shield for her kids. We're all tied by this truth: how we see ourselves doesn't just change our days, it changes the world. You're not here to shrink or survive. You're here to rise, to weave a legacy that echoes beyond your breath, a legacy of resilience, grace, and a love so fierce it rewrites the rules. Look at Sojourner Truth, born Isabella Baum-Free in 1797, a slave who walked away from bondage and spoke truth that shook a nation. Her life wasn't just hers, it was a call to every woman to claim her voice, her space, her worth. That's what this Stoic path builds, not just a better you, but a better us. When I started this journey, rewriting my doubts, embracing my laugh, choosing myself, I didn't know it would spill over. But it did. My friend Clara saw me quit a soul-crushing job and started her own art studio. My niece, at 14, watched me wear what I love and stop hiding her braces behind her hand. Small shifts, yes, but they're threads in a bigger story, one where women lift each other by lifting ourselves. This transformation isn't quiet, it sings. Stoicism gives us the tools: see what's real, let go of what's not, build what lasts. I think of my co-worker Lena, who used to cry in the bathroom over deadlines, now standing firm, saying, "I've got this." She learned it from watching me, and I learned it from the women before me, Fanny, Harriet, my own mother, who'd smile through tears and say, "We keep going." That's the legacy, not perfection, but presence, a life where your flaws become your fire, your compassion becomes your strength, and your voice becomes a chorus for every woman who's ever felt alone. It's bigger than one life. When you choose this path, when you turn doubt into defiance, pain into power, you light a spark others can see. I met a woman named Grace at a women's shelter once, 50 years old, starting over after leaving an abusive marriage. She told me, "I saw my sister fight for herself, and I thought, maybe I can too." Now, she volunteers, helping other women find their feet. That's the Stoic woman's gift. Your courage doesn't just save you, it saves someone else. From the suffragettes who march to the single moms who rise at dawn, we're all part of this chain, each link forged in the heat of choosing ourselves. This isn't the end, it's the beginning. Stoicism says life is what we make it, and for women, that's a revolution. You're not just enough, you're a force, a wave crashing against every no that's tried to hold you back. I think of my daughter, her eyes wide with wonder, and I want her to inherit this, a world where women don't just endure but thrive, where our stories aren't whispered but shouted. So take this truth, your perception shapes everything, and run with it. Build a life where your laugh rings, your heart heals, and your spirit soars. You're the legacy, the Stoic secret every woman deserves to claim, a beacon for the ones coming after, proving we were always meant to shine.